Zara staggered through the blistering heat, her parched lips cracked, and her throat as dry as the desert she walked across. She barely noticed the burning sun overhead or the dust storms that whipped across the barren land. All she could focus on was the burning thirst that had settled deep inside her. Her body felt weaker with each step, her vision blurred. It had been days since she had last seen any water, and her supplies had long run out. Earth had become a different planet, one where survival was a constant battle. The oceans were gone. The sky, once a rich blue, had turned a dull shade of brown, choked by the dust and smoke of centuries of human carelessness. The world was drying up, and people were desperate. They had built domed cities, hiding from the scorching sun and the poisoned air. But outside, in the wasteland, it was every person for themselves. Zara was no different. She was a survivor, like the rest of them. But as the days passed, and the water she carried in her canteen ran out, she began to question how long she could survive in a world that seemed to be slowly killing her. Her muscles were stiff and aching, and the heat was suffocating. Her throat burned, and the few drops of saliva she could muster did nothing to quench the desperate thirst that had settled in her bones. She had heard the stories of the last places where water could still be found. Ancient wells, secret underground lakes, even the remains of ancient alien technology that could somehow bring water back to life. But the world had grown silent. The last few hopeful whispers of survival were now legends, passed down through hushed conversations among the survivors. Zara couldn't waste any more time. She had to find something. Anything. Her thoughts became a blur as she stumbled forward, her vision narrowing. It was only when the wind shifted that she saw him. He was standing in the distance, almost as if he had materialized out of nowhere. At first, Zara thought it was a mirage, just another cruel trick of her dehydration. But no, as she focused, she saw him more clearly, standing tall against the harsh desert landscape. His clothes were unlike anything she had seen in years, clean, almost pristine, as if he had stepped out of a world she had long forgotten. Her steps faltered, then quickened. The man's figure became sharper, more real with each passing moment. "Water," she croaked, her voice weak from the dryness in her throat. "Please, I need water." He looked at her, calm and unhurried, as if he had all the time in the world. His eyes were strange, not quite human. They gleamed with a strange, distant light that made Zara feel like she was looking at something ancient, something beyond her comprehension. "I have what you need," the man said, his voice smooth and steady. Zara blinked, disoriented. Was he really offering her water? It had been so long since anyone had spoken to her, let alone offered anything. She stumbled closer, her legs shaking beneath her. "I can give you more than just water," he continued. "I can give you a future." Zara's heart raced. What did that mean? A future. There was no future left for the likes of her. The last of humanity had been scattered, living on scraps in their small domed cities. There was no hope beyond that. "Please," Zara gasped. "I just need water. I'll do anything." The man's lips curled into a faint smile, but his gaze never wavered. "You don't understand yet. What I offer is more than just survival. I offer something that can change everything. But you must be willing to pay the price." Zara's mind whirled. She was willing to do anything. The thirst was unbearable. The idea of more than just survival, the chance to change everything, sounded like a dream she had long abandoned. "Anything," she whispered again, her voice barely audible. "I'll do anything." He stepped closer, and Zara could feel the air around him shift, a strange hum of energy that she couldn't explain. "I can give you water," he said softly, "but I need you to make a choice." She didn't understand, but it didn't matter. Her hands were trembling as she reached for him, the last remnants of her strength slipping away. The thirst was overpowering. Her mind was blurry with the desperate need for relief. "Then give it to me," Zara demanded, her voice breaking. I don't care what the cost is." The man's eyes glowed faintly as he placed a hand on her shoulder, and Zara felt a strange warmth flood through her. She could feel something shifting, something inside her. The man nodded, a flicker of approval in his eyes. "You've made your choice." Zara's head spun as the man's hand rested on her shoulder. For a moment, everything felt distant. The wind, the heat, even the dryness in her throat. It was like she was floating in a strange dream. The man's touch was warm, almost soothing, but there was something unsettling about it, something she couldn't quite understand. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice weak from the journey. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied her with those strange, glowing eyes, as if searching for something deep within her. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm, but with an edge of authority that made Zara uneasy. "I'm Lucas," he said simply, "and I have something that can save you. But before I give you water, you must understand what it truly means. This isn't just a drop you can drink and walk away from. It's more." Zara's mind was too clouded with thirst to fully process what he was saying. She was desperate. She needed water now, anything to end the burning agony in her body. But something about his words, his presence, made her pause. "More," she repeated, confused. "What do you mean, more?" Lucas took a slow breath, his gaze never leaving hers. Then, in a movement that was both fluid and deliberate, he reached into the pack on his back and pulled out a small glass vial. It shimmered with a strange, iridescent light, unlike anything Zara had ever seen. It wasn't water. At least, not like any water she knew. "This," Lucas explained, holding the vial between them, "is the Hydra formula. It's not just water. It's the key to saving Earth, to saving humanity. And it's the only way for you to survive in a world that no longer supports life as you know it." Zara stared at the vial, her thirst pulling her attention to it like a magnet. But a nagging feeling in her chest told her that this wasn't just a simple solution. Nothing had ever been simple in a world like this. "How does it work?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Why can't you just give me regular water?" Lucas's lips twitched into a small smile, as if he were amused by her question, but there was no humor in his eyes. "You're not asking the right question, Zara. Water is just a small part of it. What I'm offering you goes beyond your understanding of survival. The Hydra formula has the ability to do more than just hydrate your body. It can regenerate water. It can create life where there is none. It can change the course of the future." Zara's heart skipped a beat. This was no ordinary water, but she was too thirsty, too weak to care about the details. She needed it. She needed it now. "What do I have to do?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I'll do anything. Just give it to me." Lucas's expression softened for the first time. There was a kindness in his eyes, but it was distant, like the eyes of someone who had seen too much of the world's suffering. "It's not that simple," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "The Hydra formula isn't just a substance. It's alive, and it needs to bond with a human host in order to function. You must allow it to merge with your body. And once it does, you'll no longer be entirely human. The transformation will begin. You'll be able to create water from the air, from dust, from anything around you, but you will no longer be the person you were. You'll be changed." Zara's mind raced. The thought of becoming something else terrified her, but the promise of water, real, life-giving water, was too strong. How could she turn that down? How could she refuse the chance to live? "Will it hurt?" she asked, swallowing hard. Lucas hesitated, his eyes shifting away from hers. "It will. The process is painful, but the end result is worth it. You'll survive. You'll become more than human, but only if you're willing to pay the price." Zara's throat felt like it was closing up. Her desperation for water surged again, overpowering her fear. What was a little pain when her life was on the line? She had seen so many people die out here, people who had once been strong, like her, but who had been defeated by the unforgiving wastelands. Water was the only way to live, "I'll do it," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Lucas studied her for a long moment, as if measuring her resolve. Finally, he nodded. "Then it's done." With that, he uncorked the vial and held it up to her lips. Zara could see the strange, glowing liquid inside, shimmering with an energy that felt alive. Without another word, Lucas tipped the vial and poured the liquid into her mouth. At first, it felt like any other water, cool, refreshing, and soothing. But then, the sensation changed. A burning heat spread through her chest, and her body convulsed as if it were being torn apart and remade at once. Pain exploded through her veins, and she collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. Zara's world became a blur of fire and cold, light and shadow. She screamed as her body shifted, changed. And just as the pain reached its peak, everything went dark. Zara awoke in darkness, the world around her spinning like a storm. She gasped, her lungs burning as if she hadn't taken a breath in days. Her body was on fire, every muscle screaming in agony. Her chest heaved as she struggled to sit up, her hands trembling. Something was different. She blinked, her vision blurry at first, and then sharper. The ground beneath her felt strange, as though it were both solid and fluid at the same time. Her senses seemed to be heightened. She could hear the faint hum of the wind, the subtle rustling of leaves in the distance, even the beat of her own pulse in her ears. But her body, it was not the same. She could feel it, the change creeping beneath her skin. "Where am I?" Zara whispered hoarsely, her voice rasping in the still air. She tried to push herself up, but her limbs felt heavy, unnatural. When she finally managed to stand, she staggered and nearly lost her balance. Her reflection caught her eye in a puddle of water nearby, and she froze. Her skin, once sun-baked and rough, was now smooth and metallic, as if a layer of silvery sheen had replaced the dryness of her previous life. Her hands trembled as she touched her face, feeling the smoothness of her skin. Her eyes were different too. They had taken on a faint glow, an eerie light that shone even in the dim twilight. "What happened to me?" she whispered in shock. The pain had faded, but now there was an unsettling calmness within her. The world felt different. It was like she could feel everything around her. The vibrations in the air, the tiny movements of insects beneath the soil, the very heartbeat of the planet. And then she felt it. Deep within her chest, a strange, pulsing energy that was not entirely her own. It wasn't her heartbeat, but something else, something alive. The Hydra formula, the change Lucas had warned her about. Zara stumbled forward, her head still spinning, and collapsed against a nearby rock for support. She placed her hands on the cool surface, and before she knew what was happening, water began to form in her palms. It wasn't just any water. It was thick, almost like condensation from the air around her, gathering together until it became a steady stream that trickled from her hands. Her eyes widened in shock as she watched the water form, the energy inside her moving like a current. "Impossible," she breathed. But it wasn't. The water was real. She could feel it, taste it on her tongue, as if it had always been inside her, waiting to be released. Zara slowly lifted her hand, holding the water in the air, watching as it shimmered and danced in the faint light. She could almost sense the very molecules of the water, the way they vibrated, the way they were connected to everything around her. A surge of power rushed through her, and she dropped the water, her heart racing. The sensation was overwhelming, and she had to steady herself against the rock. "Lucas," she murmured, her voice unsteady. As if on cue, Lucas appeared from the shadows, stepping forward with that same calm expression he always wore. He watched her with a slight smile, but there was something different in his eyes now, a quiet pride, as though he knew exactly what she was becoming. "You're adapting," he said simply, his voice like cool water. Zora looked at him, confusion still clouding her mind. "What's happening to me? What have you done?" Lucas took a step closer, his gaze never leaving hers. "I've given you the hyper formula. And now, you are more than human. You are the key to saving this planet. Zara's head throbbed with a mix of emotions: fear, anger, disbelief. She had never asked for this. She had only wanted water, a drop to quench her burning thirst. But now, she could feel the power inside her, the power that was changing her, making her something else. She wasn't human anymore, not completely. And yet, the need to survive, the need to help, still pulsed within her. "Is this the price?" she whispered, her voice shaking. "To become like this?" Lucas nodded slowly. "Yes, the Hydra formula is a gift, but it comes with a cost. You will never be the same again. You can create water, yes, but you'll lose your connection to the world you once knew. Your humanity will slip away, little by little, until you are no longer the person you were." Zara's hands clenched into fists, but even as she did, she felt the water inside her stir. She wanted to fight, to reject this new reality, but the truth was undeniable. The world had changed. She had changed. "Then what do I do now?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Lucas looked at her for a long time, as though weighing her words before answering. "Now you decide what kind of future you want. You have the power to save the Earth, but you must choose whether you want to keep your humanity or become something greater." Zara felt a pang of fear shoot through her, but it was mixed with something else, a quiet, stirring sense of purpose. She wasn't sure what the future held, but one thing was certain: she would never go back to the way things were. The transformation had begun, and there was no turning back now. Zara's mind raced as she absorbed Lucas's words. The power to change the world, to create water, to reshape life itself. It sounded like a miracle, a gift that could save humanity, perhaps even restore Earth. But there was a price: her humanity. She didn't know how much longer she could stand here, wrestling with the emotions flooding through her. The pain from the transformation had mostly faded, leaving her with a strange sense of calm. But the confusion remained. Was she really ready to give up everything she knew, everything she had been, for the chance to change the future? Lucas seemed to read her thoughts, his gaze steady but filled with understanding. "You're torn," he said, as if he had seen this inner struggle many times before. "It's not an easy choice, Zara. To save the world, you must sacrifice a part of yourself, a part that you may never get back." Zara swallowed hard. The idea of becoming something different, something beyond human, made her feel like she was standing on the edge of a cliff. She could almost hear the wind calling her to leap, but fear gripped her heart. "I never asked for this," Zara said, her voice barely above a whisper. Her hands clenched into fists again, and she looked down at them, watching the subtle glow that still emanated from her skin. "All I wanted was to survive. A drop of water. But now," her voice trailed off, "now she was something else entirely. You wanted to survive, and now you will. But more than that," Lucas said, his tone serious, "you have the power to save others, to heal this dying world. What you hold inside you is more than just the ability to create water. You can help restore the ecosystems, bring life back to the land, breathe life into the Earth. All you need to do is embrace it." Zara turned away, looking out over the barren horizon. She had seen the devastation, the cities that were crumbling, the land that had become a wasteland. People fought for scraps of food, for water, for the hope that maybe, somehow, they could survive. But now, there was a chance, an actual chance, to change things. But could she? Could she really do it? "I don't know if I can do this," Zara said, her voice cracking. "What if I lose myself in all of it? What if I'm not human anymore? I don't know if I can live with that." Lucas's voice softened. "You won't lose yourself. You will evolve. The human part of you will always be there, but you will become something greater. Your humanity will guide you, and the power inside you will help you find your way. But the choice is yours." Zara stared out at the wasteland before her. the lifeless land stretching out to the horizon. She could see the dust storms rising, the cracked earth, the broken cities. Humanity had come so far, but it had brought itself to the brink of extinction. Maybe, just maybe, she could be the one to pull it back. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The air was hot, dry, and almost suffocating, but she could still feel something different in it now. The strange energy inside her hummed, like a current running through her veins. It was undeniable, this new power. She couldn't ignore it. But could she control it? "I don't know if I can be what the world needs," Zara said softly, more to herself than to Lucas. "I'm just one person." Lucas stepped closer, his expression unreadable. One person is all it takes. The right person, with the right power, can change the world. But it's up to you how far you're willing to go. Zara's heart pounded in her chest. She was overwhelmed by the weight of the decision. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. This was about becoming something more, something that could reshape the future of the planet, of humanity itself. "How do I know if I'm making the right choice?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You don't," Lucas replied quietly. "But you can't hesitate. If you want to save what's left of the world, you have to act. You can't wait forever. Time is running out." Zara nodded slowly, her eyes locked on the distant horizon. She knew Lucas was right. The world was dying, and humanity had little time left. But was she ready to carry the weight of that responsibility? Could she really become the savior they all needed? The answer wasn't clear, but one thing was, if she wanted to survive, if she wanted to make a real difference, she had to embrace the change. She couldn't go back to the way things were. She couldn't run from this power. Zara took a deep breath and made her decision. She would move forward. She would evolve. "I'll do it," she said, her voice steady, though her heart still raced. "I'll be the one to save this world. I won't run from what I've become." Lucas nodded approvingly, the faintest smile crossing his face. "Then we begin." And as Zara stood tall, her glowing hands trembling with newfound power, she realized that this was just the beginning. The real work, the real battle to save the world, was only starting. Zara felt the power inside her stir as Lucas led her into the heart of the desert. The night had fallen, and the once barren landscape now looked almost magical under the glow of distant stars. The air was still, the silence almost eerie, but Zara's senses were alive with the hum of energy that radiated from her body. "You can feel it, can't you?" Lucas asked as they walked side by side, his voice soft in the quiet night. "The power coursing through you. It's not just inside you. It's in everything. The land, the air, even the water and the atmosphere. You can tap into all of it now." Zara nodded, still amazed by how much she could sense. The world felt different, more connected. Her body seemed to hum with the energy of the planet, like she was one with everything around her. The old Zara would have never believed such a thing was possible, but now, with every breath, she could feel the pulse of life beneath the surface of the earth. She stopped walking for a moment, closing her eyes. With a simple thought, she focused on the air around her. The heat that had always seemed unbearable now felt like a challenge to her. She reached out mentally, pulling the moisture from the atmosphere, willing the water to come together in her palms. At first, nothing happened, but then she felt it, tiny beads of moisture gathering in her hands. Slowly, like a miracle, water began to form, trickling down her fingers before pooling in her palms. Zara opened her eyes in awe, staring at the cool, clear liquid in her hands. For the first time since the transformation, she felt truly connected to the world. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was a part of something larger, something beyond human. Lucas watched her closely, his expression unreadable. "You're ready," he said softly. Zara's heart raced. "Ready for what?" "The next step," Lucas replied, his voice serious. "The world needs more than just water. It needs life. And you, Zara, can bring it back." Zara looked down at the water in her hands, wondering what he meant. Wasn't water enough? But the more she thought about it, the more she realized Lucas was right. Water was only a small part of what the world needed. The earth was dying. Forests, rivers, and animals had all but disappeared. The deserts had spread, swallowing cities and life alike. Creating water wasn't enough. She had to do more. "I don't understand," she admitted, the weight of the responsibility pressing down on her. "How can I bring life back? What can I do?" Lucas motioned for her to follow, and they walked deeper into the desert. The ground beneath their feet felt hard, dry, but there was something else there, something waiting to be awakened. Lucas stopped in front of a large, cracked stone. The rock had the same dry, lifeless appearance as everything else, but Zara could feel something deep beneath it. "This is where you start," Lucas said, his voice low. "Underneath this rock is what remains of an ancient seed. It's not like anything you've ever seen, but it's a part of Earth's original life force. You need to tap into that energy and awaken it. That's your true power." Zara stared at the stone, feeling the heavy weight of the task ahead. She had no idea how to awaken a seed buried in the earth, but the power inside her, that strange connection to everything around her, told her that it was possible. Taking a deep breath, Zara placed her hands on the stone. She closed her eyes again, focusing on the energy around her, feeling the pulse of the planet beneath her fingertips. She imagined the seed, buried deep within the earth, waiting for the right moment to grow. With a wave of concentration, she reached deep into the ground, calling out to the seed, willing it to awaken. For a moment, nothing happened. Zara's muscles strained, and the energy inside her flared up in frustration. But then, as if responding to her, a faint rumble shook the ground. She felt the earth shift beneath her palms, a small tremor running through her fingers. Slowly, the stone cracked, and beneath it, something moved. Zara's breath caught in her throat as a small sprout, green and vibrant, began to push its way up through the soil. The sprout was unlike anything she had ever seen. It glowed faintly, as if it had absorbed the very energy of the world. Zara stood back in awe, watching as the sprout grew before her eyes, reaching toward the night sky. It was small, but it was alive. And it was just the beginning. "It's working," Zara whispered, her voice filled with wonder. Lucas nodded, his expression proud. "You've done it, Zara. You've awakened the seed. This is how you will restore life to the planet. One seed, one plant at a time." Zara's heart swelled with pride. She had done it. The power she now carried had given life back to the earth, even if it was just a tiny sprout. She knew there was much more to be done. But this was a start, and with each new step, the earth would heal. But even as she stood there, a part of her remained uncertain. How long would it take to restore the planet? How many lives would she have to touch before the world could truly heal? And more importantly, how much of herself would she lose in the process? There were no answers yet, only the growing sense of urgency and hope. Zara understood now that this was her destiny. She had been chosen to save the world. But the price of that salvation, she feared, would be much higher than she had imagined. Days passed in a blur as Zara worked to awaken more of the Earth's lost life. One by one, she called to the seeds buried deep beneath the cracked surface, and one by one, they responded, sprouting into glowing plants. With each success, the power inside her grew stronger, and the connection to the world around her deepened. She could feel the land healing, slowly but surely, but it wasn't enough. The world still felt broken. Zora paused, standing on the edge of a vast canyon, her hands trembling as she looked out over the landscape. The glow from her hands had dimmed slightly, a sign that her power was becoming harder to sustain. The more she used it, the more she felt drained. The transformation had already taken so much from her, and now it was asking for more. "What's happening to me?" she whispered, her voice filled with uncertainty. She had thought that the transformation would make her stronger, invincible, but the weight of it was becoming unbearable. The world was healing, yes, but at a cost. Are you okay? Lucas's voice broke through her thoughts, and she turned to see him standing behind her, his eyes filled with concern. Zara nodded, though the feeling inside her told a different story. I'm just tired, she said softly. I've been using my power every day, trying to bring life back to the earth. But it's not enough. The damage is too great. And I'm starting to feel it. Like I'm losing a part of myself with each plant I bring to life. Lucas stepped closer, his eyes thoughtful. The power you have is not without its costs. You're giving part of yourself every time you use it. Your energy, your humanity, it's all being exchanged for the Earth's healing. You've become a vessel of life, but it's draining you. Zara's heart sank. She had feared this moment. She had known that the more she used the Hyper formula, the more it would take from her, but she hadn't imagined it would be this hard. What do I do? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I can't keep doing this. I'm changing, Lucas. I don't even feel human anymore. Lucas's gaze softened, and he placed a hand on her shoulder. You're not just human anymore. You're something more. But the change, the evolution, it's not something you can reverse. It's part of who you are now. And that's something you'll have to come to terms with. But remember, Zara, the world needs you. Without your help, it won't survive. Zara looked down at her hands, the faint glow still pulsing beneath her skin. She could feel the energy that flowed through her, the power that was now a part of her very being. But it felt like a constant battle, her humanity fighting against the force inside her that wanted to consume it all. I'm not sure I can keep going, Zara confessed, her voice shaky. The more I heal the world, the more I lose of myself. How much more of me is left? How long until I'm just a machine, a tool for the planet, with no connection to the people I was trying to save? Lucas studied her carefully, his eyes filled with both empathy and resolve. That's the price of power, Zara. You wanted to save humanity, but sometimes, to do that, you have to give up pieces of who you were. The question is, are you willing to sacrifice those parts to achieve something greater? To save what's left of Earth? Zara was silent for a long moment, the weight of his words pressing on her chest. The planet was dying, and she had the power to fix it. But at what cost? Could she truly become the savior the world needed without losing herself completely? I don't know if I can, Zara said softly. I want to help. I want to make things right. But I'm not sure I can do it if it means I'll never be the person I was again. Lucas nodded, his expression understanding. You have to decide, Zara. Do you continue down this path, knowing the cost, or do you walk away and let the world collapse? The choice is yours. But remember, there are no easy answers, and time is running out. Zara turned away from him, her heart heavy. The world was depending on her, but the price of saving it might be too high. Could she really save the Earth without losing everything she held dear? She closed her eyes, feeling the power surge within her once more. She could hear the land calling to her, feel the seeds beneath the surface waiting for her touch. It was tempting to give in, to let the power take over completely and restore the Earth in a flood of life and energy. But in the back of her mind, a question gnawed at her. How much of herself was she willing to give? The wind picked up, and Zara opened her eyes, staring out at the horizon. The answer was clearer now. She had already given so much, but there was still more to do. She wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. She turned back to Lucas, determination in her eyes. I won't stop, she said firmly. I'll find a way to balance it. I'll keep fighting, but I won't lose myself. I'll make sure of it. Lucas gave her a nod of approval. You're stronger than you realize, Zara. The world needs your strength, and you'll find the way. You always do. Zara didn't know if she could truly find a way to balance the power and her humanity, but she had no choice. The Earth needed her, and she wasn't ready to let it slip away. With a deep breath, Zara stepped forward, ready to continue her journey, no matter the cost. The sun was setting on the horizon, casting long shadows over the once barren land now dotted with patches of new life. The plants Zora had awakened over the past weeks had started to take root, slowly turning the lifeless desert into a landscape full of promise. Yet, as the green spread, so too did the weight of Zora's decision. The power inside her was growing, but so was the toll it was taking on her. The more she used it, the more she felt the loss of herself. She could feel it in every step, in every breath, as if the very essence of who she was slipping away. Zora stood on the edge of a new forest she had helped create, her hands still glowing faintly with the energy she had summoned. Trees reached toward the sky, their leaves shimmering in the fading light. The world was changing, but she wasn't sure she was ready for the price. How much longer can I keep doing this? Zora whispered to herself, her voice carrying in the wind. How much more of me is left? She turned to look at Lucas, who had been with her every step of the way. He had watched her change, had seen the struggles and the triumphs. But now, even he seemed to sense that she was reaching her limit. His eyes were filled with concern, but also respect. You've done more than anyone thought possible, Zora, Lucas said quietly. The world is already changing, thanks to you. The earth is healing, but you've reached a point where you must choose. How far are you willing to go? Zora closed her eyes, her chest tight. She had already given so much. Her body had changed, her mind had altered, and yet the world still wasn't fully saved. The damage had been too great. She had started this journey with the belief that she could fix everything, that she could save the world and still remain herself. But now, standing in the midst of this growing forest, Zora realized the truth. She couldn't have both. I thought I could do it all, Zora said, her voice trembling. I thought I could save everyone and still keep the person I was. But I'm not sure I can. Every time I use my power, I feel it slipping away. How much of me can I lose before I'm no longer human? Before I become something else entirely? Lucas stepped closer, his hand resting on her shoulder. Zora, you are still you. You're just more. You're a part of something greater now. The earth needed you, and you answered the call. But yes, there is a price. The power you carry isn't something you can take lightly. But the choice is yours, and only you can decide how far you want to go. Zora took a deep breath, looking out at the green that stretched before her. It was a sight she had once thought impossible. The earth was coming back to life, piece by piece. But at what cost? She could feel the pull of the land, calling her to use her power once again, to finish what she had started. I never imagined it would be this hard, she admitted, her voice cracking. I wanted to save the earth, but I didn't realize I'd have to give up so much of myself in the process. I don't know if I can keep going like this. I don't want to lose myself. Lucas. Lucas's voice was calm but firm. You're not losing yourself, Zora. You're evolving. You're becoming the bridge between humanity and the planet. There's no turning back, but there's also no going alone. You've already done more than anyone else could. The choice now is about balance. What kind of future do you want to build? One where the earth thrives, but you remain whole, or one where you save the planet at the expense of everything you are? Zora stared at the forest once more, her heart heavy. She had given so much, but there was still so much left to do. Could she really walk away now, knowing that humanity and the planet depended on her? Could she truly abandon the power that had brought the earth back to life? She thought about the people she had left behind, the families, the children, the survivors who still fought to find hope in a dying world. They were depending on her. But if she kept going, if she kept sacrificing more of herself, what would be left for her? With a deep breath, Zora closed her eyes and made her decision. I will continue, she said, her voice steady but filled with resolve. I will save the earth, but I will find a way to keep who I am. I won't let the power consume me. Lucas smiled, a proud, knowing smile. You're stronger than you realize, Zora. You don't have to give everything. You can find balance, and when the time comes, you'll know exactly what to do. Zora nodded, a new sense of determination filling her. The Earth was healing, but she still had work to do. She would not let the power take her. She would save the world, but she would do it as herself. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, Zara felt ready for whatever came next. As the last rays of the sun dipped below the horizon, Zara stepped forward, her hands glowing brighter than ever. She was no longer just a survivor. She was the guardian of the Earth, and she would fight for its future on her terms.